Hi, everybody. This is the Men's Human Rights Discord. I'm Taz, and this is our weekly chat stream. Welcome aboard, everybody. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening to us. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit about the state of mental health support for men and boys, um, and what at least we see as missing or mishandled. Um, I would say also what's being handled fairly well, but also just a general discussion of the state of men's mental health support. Um, so welcome and thanks for coming. Right. I guess I'll jump in before the stream started. We were all talking about this, and I've got an unfortunate breadth of experience with trying to get mental health support. Um, and I managed to live through it and tell the tale. But basically, that, you know, especially for men and boys, we're subject to an unfortunate uh, kind of cookie cutter and um, top down or very externalized approach to fixing us, which has culminated in things like a theory of toxic masculinity, theories of uh, masculinity essentially being in the way of what they've decided is good, well adjusted mental health. And also a lot of stumbling blocks that involve um, a medicalized and what's called pathologized uh, approach to, as I say, fixing us, basically in spite of ourselves, so that we don't generally take a lot of responsibility for our mental health, either by ignoring it within the belief that there is no help out there, or as in my case, attempting to get it and being mishandled to the point where I got steadily worse. That's not to say that everything about mental health care is insufficient or incompetent. That's not true. But it's missing some key elements that I believe, and I think we all believe, need to start showing up in mental health support, just for the simple fact that if it doesn't start showing up, the death toll is going to continue to rise. Before we started, I pointed out that often I will be in conversations with mental health professionals, and I'll have to get it across to them that a certain percentage, probably too high a percentage of their clientele, regardless of their gender or sexuality, are in danger of death if their mental health is not properly treated.
Mm,
And I say that a coroner's report wouldn't say he died of poor mental health or she died of poor mental health. I'll say it was suicide or cirrhosis of the liver or drug overdose or overwork, or whatever.
mm,
But, the root cause of it will be that even if they attempted to get help, they were treated as an insufficient and defective being, that requires that somebody needs to take a wrench to,
yes.
and the type of mental health care that finally actually worked for me was nothing like that. I tell people frequently that even in my case, I'm really responsive, and I have a great deal of success with standard talk therapy, right? But even for me, there are other alternative forms of therapy that are required, and there's really nothing anybody can do about that. It's just the way it is, and it, it takes a lot of courage among the therapists that have actually worked well with me for them, to admit that, yeah, this cookie cutter pneumatic stamp version of mental health support is killing a lot of people. And it's unfortunate. It's given rise to, a lot of really insane and dangerous alternative worldviews, especially among young men, that I predict, very shortly, uh, that's going to have a very detrimental effect on life for everybody. You know,
Mm.
that none of these things are a joke, and none of these things are given to a cookie cutter approach.
No.
Again, before the chat began, we were talking about the therapeutic effect for men and boys of, being among a group of men uh, pointed to a specific task that has nothing to do with talking about their feelings or, expressing their deepest and darkest, but just fixing a car, or carving a piece of wood, or, building a shed, or working in that shed. That has a therapeutic effect. That doesn't hasn't been the case as much for myself, but I ask people, so what? You know, what difference does it make whether it's something that works for me or something that works better for somebody else? There are things that work and things that do not. There are rules to this, and the actual rules to it aren't made by anybody. They are just there. That the action of uh, like I say, taking a road trip, with a group of guys, without, with the goal in mind of getting from point A to point B, right? That's why we are in the vehicle and traveling down the road. But in the process of doing that, I've seen miracles happen among men, where individual man in that group of people is struggling just to not give up entirely by the end of the road trip. They're doing well, and they're eager to keep going. They're eager to stay with that process, right? So it's none of this is terribly complicated, and none of it's terribly uh, difficult, to present us. Again, I'm using men and boys to present to a young man or boy, but it still has to be something that they can take on for themselves. They can take their own ownership of. Because if they don't do that, and this is my own experience, I had very well-intentioned and very talented people take breathtaking amounts of money and resources and time to try to help me, and it almost killed me. But luckily I made it through, just to look back and say, for all of the good intentions and for all of the regard for me and all the compassion for me, they failed, and that hurts, right? I mean, it doesn't just hurt me. I hurt on behalf of them because I know that not every guy they tried to help made it. A lot of them died. So anyway, thanks for coming.
It's a scary thought when you think about it, isn't it? The number of, for every one that they've successfully helped, there's maybe another 50 that they couldn't,
Yeah.
because they couldn't reach that that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've said this off stream, that there needs to be a individual response to somebody's mental health issues and solving them.
Yeah.
That can be done on a mass spectrum. I think that's the right word I'm looking for. But having these alternative types of therapy available, whether that be going to a farm and just spending a half a day with farm animals, or as we the organisations Men's Sheds, which
Yeah.
people, if they join this Discord, they can see the link to that.
Yeah.
Men's Sheds in Australia, in particular, it was all set up to support widowed men.
Yeah.
And they found that once they got the men into this environment of just being in a place around other men, things started to improve, and it was dramatic. You've spoken yourself, Taz, about as Richard said, that got taken over. Well, unfortunately in Australia, yes, I don't think it's quite as bad as it over here in the UK. But the fact that that got taken over and people didn't like that, it just shows that society as a whole doesn't really care or care enough. They would rather throw terms and shaming and everything else out there and try and continue to hurt men rather than try and help. If we really wanted to help, we would understand that, yes, okay, sitting in a room talking to somebody can help, but so can these alternative forms of therapy. And it's something we really need to get out there. And it's something that the mental health care industry, I hate to use that term, but it's the only one I can think of right now, needs to also take on board. There's a different way of doing this, because what we've been doing for the last, I don't know how many decades now, obviously isn't working.
No, not well enough.
Yeah. And I've spoken out as well about the inexorable erasure of men's spaces
Mhm.
and men's communities.
Yeah.
That needs to end. We need to bring that back. I've spoken off stream as well about young men engaging with their elders. Doesn't necessarily need to be their father or any family member for that matter, but engaging with somebody who has life experience, who you can maybe smell the sulfur of hell on, is important, because you learn. And then you don't just learn from their mistakes, you learn from your own experiences to a certain degree. As somebody else said, a smart man learns from their mistakes, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, whatever the expression was.
Like that. Yeah.
There's so much more that can be done. And obviously we're a men's group. That's what we do. We're here for men and boys. End of. That's not because we hate women or anything else. We concern ourselves with what men and boys are going through currently. And there is a massive crisis out there, particularly within the realm of men and boys' mental health.
Yeah.
And if there are any men and boys listening to this conversation right now, just because ordinary therapy doesn't work for you, doesn't mean there isn't something that will.
Right.
You just need whatever the darkness is in your own heads, in your own minds, put it off for a day. And that's what you need to keep. We need you to keep on doing. Just put it off for a day.
Right.
And tomorrow put it off until the next day. And just because something will come along. We've spoken about going to a farm, going on a road trip with your friends, going fishing, just going down to the bar and shooting some pool, or going down to a basketball court, or there will be something out there that works for you. Taking your deceased dad's car and rebuilding it. If that's what you need to do, then go ahead and do it. Don't let anybody tell you that is wrong. Just because it's not therapy, it is still therapeutic.
Right. Yeah. The downside is that, it's it's a big list of different kinds of things that that can be therapeutic. But the good news is that there's a lot to choose from, you
Yeah.
know, and men and boys, you know, being, I'll just say it, sort of naturally resilient, you know, are willing to put up with a few failures and a few unfairnesses if the end goal is that you'll find something that works. You know, it's something that I tell people in response to, you know, things like accusing, you know, a good example is men's sheds or men's groups, you know, accusing them of being unfair for not, you know, including lots and lots of different kinds of women and girls. And, you know, I say in response to that, you know, there are an unending list of things about life that are very unfair, you know, but some of the things that are unfair produce results that everyone is happy with, you know, and that enforcing fairness on any of those things, including men's mental health, at the expense of those results makes everyone miserable. So the
Yes.
fairness of it is forgotten,
Mm.
you know. It's like nobody's thinking about the fairness of it anymore because everybody is really miserable, you
Yeah.
know. And then, you know, somebody has to come along and say, well, what that means is we have to do something that's kind of unfair,
Mm.
you know. And if it's bad enough, then people will be like, okay, you know, fine, you know. And then at the end of it, everybody's happy, you know.
Yeah.
Like I say, these conditions and these pressures of collective human nature on each of us individually, you know, they're bound by rules, and they're not. Those rules are not made by any individual person. They're just there,
Yeah.
you know, and we have to abide by them. They're designed in such a way that they can't be broken. It's like the speed of light. You don't get a ticket for going faster than the speed of light. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
same principle. You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, not to just constantly beat up on mainstream therapy, because I think I don't really believe in doing that. But to point out, you know, that they do some things very well, you know, and they do some things that I think they should do more of.
Mm.
Um, you know, again, I use myself as an example. I am one of those rare cases of the kind of guy, you know, that with a few added bells and whistles, you know, I respond really well to talk therapy up to a certain point.
Mm.
You know, I can get a lot done just by sitting and letting somebody ask me questions and answering them,
Mm.
you know. But unless and until I feel like, you know, that my therapy and the whole exercise belongs to me as much as it belongs to the person I'm sitting across from,
Mm.
you know, at some point I'm just spinning my wheels, you know.
Yeah.
And again, you know, if it just caused an occasional bad day, I'd probably shut up. You know, I wouldn't say a word. I'd be like, yeah, you know, that's just me. You
Mm.
know, but if it causes, you know, months and years and decades of ongoing misery, you know, then I say, no, you know, no, you know, this has to belong to me. And
Yeah.
I was saying before the chat started, you know, these alternative forms of therapy, I use them as well, you know,
Mm.
that are not just talk therapy or this cookie cutter type of therapy. Um, and I do it because it works, you know, and I do it because I can look at people in the face and say, you know, those exercises and the results belong to me, you know, they are mine, and I own them. I'm responsible for them. I make use of them. You know, if you think of the average person, again, person, not necessarily just a man, you know, but it's difficult to get them to the point where they can say that, you know,
Mm.
to get them to the point where they can say, yeah, you know, my therapy, the exercise of my mental and emotional well-being belongs to me.
Mm.
I have I have assistance and guidance with it, but it's my deal. And if I do it wrong, I'm the one that's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And the people who care about me are going to get hurt. Or they're going to get disappointed or whatever the case. But it means it's part of my, and again, this is a masculine thing. It's part of my responsibility and my purview and my sense of my place in the world. If I
Mm.
hand it over to somebody else, I'm doomed.
Yeah.
Even if they've got all the best intentions in the world, because I'll have no stake in it and I'll have no part in it and I'll
Mm.
end up giving up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? That's part of the reason why, unfortunately, so many men are taking the final solution, as it were,
Mhm.
because this they don't have any say in how this is going to go.
Right.
This therapy, and they need to be able to do that. I think this is
Yeah.
another thing.
Yeah.
This is
Um,
should
the man who says, to his family, or even coworkers, I did this myself this week,
Mm.
and my management, and I said, I need my time to go and do my thing, right?
Mm.
And that means let's face it, sometimes it's inconvenient, right?
Mm.
Sometimes it gets in the way of other people, but correspondingly, if anybody that I'm depending on comes to me and says, we got to rearrange or reschedule or whatever, because I got to go take care of myself. I'm like, yeah, that's the way it is,
Mm.
and I'll wait.
yeah. I mean, maybe we should also discuss the sort of shaming language and things that we hear in the media when it comes to men's mental health. Obviously,
Well,
we've used the term toxic masculinity in this chat this evening, but
yeah,
this is the things we're talking about at the moment are also part of the reason why that Gillette advert was so unbelievably dangerous.
Mm.
Because what man in his right mind or otherwise is going to stand up and say, I need help and support, when you got this toxic masculinity narrative, you got this male privilege narrative being banded about, thrown out there on television or in the print media and stuff. Why would
yeah.
you do anything?
Or worse yet, the response isn't to just give up, but rather, to turn away from that and to turn towards something, that basically proves the accusation.
Yeah.
The real, like, worrying rise of, red pill masculinity. I mean, I was talking to one of my therapists about that, and I looked at her and said, yeah, I'm dismayed about it too, but the difference between you and me is I'm not surprised. You
Yeah.
know, I would only say, what did you expect exactly?
Mm.
Because, there are rules. The collective pressure of human nature and social order on any given individual is going to have a huge influence on what they do or what they don't do.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's true for all of us being here right now too.
Mm.
I mean, we happen to stumble upon a reasonably successful response to the pressures we're under, but look how many there are of us. This place ought to be crowded,
Yeah.
right? But it's not.
I don't think Marv would disagree with you in any way, shape, or form on that one.
Yeah.
It's This is another thing. Like, we need to deal with these narratives that are being pushed. I spoke before we came and did this formally about a couple of individuals for whom I have the utmost respect, because you and I, Taz in particular, don't like the idea of the hero. We think it's nobody wants to be that. When you realize the price that you have to pay to be the hero,
Yeah.
it's not worth it. But
Yeah.
there's also no shame in admiring and respecting the people that have decided to take that journey or had
Right.
that journey thrust upon them, and they've come out of it the other side. We can discuss this. I think it's sort of pertinent.
It
We
is. It's a huge part of it.
Mm.
You and I have talked before about, people in my circle who have accused me of being a hero. And I'm like, let me tell you about that. It's really not a very good job.
no,
It's an unpaid internship. The hours is lousy and it's usually pretty thankless.
yeah,
But I'm like, but more to the point is I appreciate and am grateful for my position in my circle, in my community. I really am. I said, the limits of, of that position and my gratitude for it, are that there are certain things I can do, and I enjoy doing them. There's a lot of things I can't, or I can't do it safely, or I can't keep doing it. There's a lot of things I can do for a little while, right? But I always tell people is you got to understand what happens after a little while.
yeah,
Forget about now. Think about 6 months from now, and you've got me on this treadmill. It's a bad idea, right? For everybody. I mean, I don't worry about myself that much anymore because I do know when to quit. I tell people I'm a world-class quitter, right? I really am. I've quit a lot of things. But, everyone else seems very dissatisfied when I do that. So I'm like, it's better for everybody to just not ask me to start. Right?
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's admirable, and yeah, it would stroke my ego, and yeah, it would like strengthen my juice. And I'm like, I'm not interested,
yeah,
because I've already done that part. I've already paid for that,
yeah,
and like, because you haven't, interlocutor, because you haven't seen me go through that, you don't know what I mean. But it's one of those things, you're going to have to trust me.
yeah,
Because it's a
yeah,
horror show. I mean, I that's when I tell them, there are people that used to be in my life, right, that have walked away from me forever. They won't ever
yeah,
forgive me, and they won't ever forget, and
yeah,
that's the reason why, don't be that person.
yeah. I mean, one thing I think we should talk about is this idea of men don't feel things, or they're not emotive and things like that. And I'm going to bring up 3 different examples as to why having control. I believe having control of your emotions is an important thing. It's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
The first one is Chesley Sullenberger. Now, I think most people born before 2000 will know who he is. He landed a wide body airline on a river after it struck birds and lost both its engines. He has spoken at length, both in his book and in interviews, about the extreme reaction he had in the moment, and that there is no way he could have done what he did without having everything under control within himself. He couldn't control the fact that he no longer had engines. He couldn't control the fact that he was heading to a river over one of the most crowded cities in the world. What he could control was his reaction to what was going on in that moment. So, people can't tell me he wasn't afraid, because I can guarantee he was absolutely terrified. He just had a job to do. if anybody's ever seen the film Hacksaw Ridge, they'll know the story of Desmond Doss. He was an army medic during the Second World War who, went into battle completely unarmed. And he saved the people that were there in the moment, said he probably saved 100 lives. He claimed 50. They settled on 75 for his Medal of Honor citation. And the third person was Keith Payne, who's an Australian Victoria Cross holder. And for those maybe from America who don't know, the Victoria Cross is the UK and the Commonwealth equivalent to the Medal of Honor. He went behind enemy lines over 40 times to rescue wounded soldiers. Now, in our modern definition, those three men are all heroes. They probably won't like being called that. In fact, I know for listening to Keith Payne speak, he doesn't like to be called a hero. He just did his job. Right. The thing they have in common is I can guarantee that they were absolutely terrified in the moment. They were probably running on adrenaline, but they had a job to do and they had everything under control that they could. And it's very, very, I think, very, very important for people to understand there is nothing wrong with having your emotions under control when you need to. And it's not toxic, it's not evil, it's not anything else. It is a necessary part, particularly of being a man.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I found myself in situations at work which I've gone, oh my, all I can do is stamp on the brake pedal, hold the steering wheel, and hope that nothing else happens.
Right.
It's utterly terrifying being in those kind of situations. Yeah. But you've got no time for panic.
No.
Or to let the fear control you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. But yeah, that's the, it's the paradox of, I guess, what most people call, heroic behavior is that, when you're in the midst of doing something heroic, the thing that you have to avoid, considering is that you're being heroic, right? Like the pilot, the medic, the warrior. I mean, they're not going to think about the interviews and the accolades and all that. They're like, I'm in trouble. Like the medic in particular is going to go in believing that his chances of coming back out are slim and none. And he's doing it anyway. And it's like, why is he doing it? So, well, because if I don't, these other people are going to die.
Yeah.
And that's like the beginning, and that's the whole package of the motive at the time. I've been in a few situations like that myself, and that was my motive. And it's like afterward, that person, because of their character, is always a little bit too eager, to hand the whole thing over to, for example, the people that they saved, or the people that, want to talk about it, or the people that want to, make a big deal out of it, and the wise person, like you were saying, I'm sorry, what was his name again? Doesn't like to be called a hero.
Oh, Keith Payne, BC.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point to that, There's because allowing oneself to be treated that way, hands over a lot of power and a lot of ability, to a lot of your sovereignty, a lot of your self-possession, and it's pretty hard not to hand some of it over. I mean, people are going to talk anyway.
Yeah. We're doing it now.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about me, but
Mm.
they do it with the understanding that I'm at best indifferent to it.
Mm.
It's like it's okay, but it's not going to direct my actions in the future. I'm still going to be me. And I learned that from like I say, the kinds of therapists that actually were able to help me.
Mm.
I mean, one of them I had a conversation with. I was like, how do you do this? And she's like, I take care of myself. And I thought about it later, and I was like, she is kind of like an airline pilot. I don't want her having a bad day and sitting down with me, but I can't enforce that, right? She has to come with that,
Mm.
and the same thing with any man, who's kind of like destined to have to do something at least a little bit heroic. You can't take a wad of heroism and just stick it in somebody, right? It has to belong to them to begin with.
Mm.
And they, not only that, but they have to feel responsible for it. And like I said, it's, none of this is easy, and a lot of it is no fun. A
Mm.
lot of it is kind of, tedious and
Yeah.
difficult. But
Mm.
if nobody does it, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
That's
I
just
think
the way it happens.
I think the film or the Die Hard franchise certainly shows the brutal dark side of being the hero, as it were.
It's a story arc, that, like you say, it's sort of a template for where it can go wrong,
Mm.
where it can end up, uh, being being frustrating and hurtful,
Mm.
most especially to the hero, but by extension to a lot of other people,
Yeah.
who didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. I mean, by the time of the third film, and the character of John McClane was in an absolute mess. He was, you know, living on next to nothing, and he was a raging alcoholic and what have you.
Right.
But that was, I think, what the things that happened in the first two films, for example, where he was forced into this situation that he didn't want to be in.
Right.
That those kind of things do take an enormous toll on your mental health. You don't want to be in those extreme circumstances. You'd be, I'm sure, if that was a real person, they'd be far happier with just living a normal life.
Yeah.
But you go and do something that extreme, and your life is never normal again. To a certain degree, doing something heroic is a death.
Yeah,
Because
it is. It is.
be,
Or at least an abandonment, of whoever you had been before.
Mm.
I mean, like my case, I've got these really clear and palpable memories, of the kind of person I used to be. And I was, you know. Um, but for all intents and purposes, for navigating the world, I am not that guy anymore.
Mm.
Not for a long time. And so yeah, you're right. It's the demise of of whatever my plan was before everything went to hell,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But again, we talk about it here, and it almost makes it sound like it's just a matter of course, and it's no big deal, and anybody can do it, and not really,
Mm.
not really. Um, the the kind of person that maybe never gets a chance to be, to do anything extraordinary on behalf of everybody or whatever, they're kind of left out of the conversation. I was telling One of my therapists had recommended me to watch a movie. I don't know if you guys have seen a Disney movie, I think, called Happy Feet, about a
Yeah.
penguin. Yeah.
Mm.
And she really wanted me to watch this movie, because I was having this kind of attitude toward the hero's journey. And so I watched, I was like, yeah, sure, and it's a kid's show, but whatever. And, the whole movie, even though it was really overloaded with, like, it was extreme, it was aggressively musical, and, all the colors were very vibrant and saturated. In other words, it was like, every trick in the book, the way Disney does, to try to, pull you out of yourself, right?
Mm.
And the whole time I was just sitting there and thinking, this isn't working on me, because I'm watching what the protagonist is going through, and the only thing I can think of is everybody else in the Penguin Village,
Mm.
and how, well, I mean, how they failed the protagonist, and that by the end of the movie, of course, their lives go on, and they will continue to fail the protagonist, just by believing that they have no part in his, in his heroism and his place in that community. But they do,
Mm.
they do. And, it's worth for the hero worshipers out there and the heroes, it's worth the time to say, it's really pointless for me to even try to be a hero, if the rest of you don't believe that you have anything to do with it.
Mm.
I mean, that's again, there's rules, that's just how it works out.
Yeah.
Right? In one of the Batman movies, the quote was, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And that's not a failure on the part of the hero. It's an inevitability if
Mm.
everybody continues, to disregard the condition of the hero.
Yeah. Yeah. You know.
Again, there's rules,
Yeah.
I just work here. I didn't write them.
Yeah. Oftentimes the hero is left broken, just
Yeah.
lonely
Hmm.
and on the verge,
Hmm.
on the verge of a major catastrophe.
Right. Right. The same character that, drove that hero to be a hero, turns and devours him, once he's separate enough from the rest of his community.
Mm.
And again, that's not a failure on his part. It's unavoidable. There's no escape.
Yeah.
Either the community that he's in, the family, whatever the case may be, the people he benefited, either they work their hardest, to reintegrate him into being just another member of the community, or he or she is going to fall apart and die.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's there's no way out.
Yeah.
It's the way it is. And
Yeah.
the expense to the rest of the community in order to, maintain the well-being of the hero is big. None
Mm.
of what we're talking about here is small potatoes. It's not a little ask. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But the choices are either you pay that price or you get no heroes.
Mm.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And there's the Keith Payne I actually heard about through a documentary, and there was another. It's about the Victoria Cross. It was, and there was another VC holder on there that was talking about his experience,
Mhm.
and he said, "I would rather have with me my friends and everybody else that was around me than that medal."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just what we were talking about.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, the extreme examples of, like I say, the Die Hard movies or, the VC holders, anybody that stands out at some point, they're still forced to look back after a certain amount of time and say, you know, I would have rather had, you know, just a regular old person's place in society than this, this like medal or this trophy or this scrapbook full of articles. That does nothing for me.
Mm.
It does. I mean, and it makes me, and I'm using myself, every time I get into that place, I start just having this real creeping feeling that I'm being pulled away from, the people I want to have love me, and care about me. And I think I'm maybe oversensitive to it because of, the people that, like I say, that I've lost forever, and the ones that I have around me now, man, I love them to death. I include you in that number, Mike, and so when it gets to the place where I'm like, am I, am I starting to be that guy again? And then I'm like, well, okay, I better fix that. 'Cause I better, I better be less like, cool or whatever, or less of a big deal. Because when you like I say, when those losses take place, I mean, they hurt worse than anything else. They really do. And it's like I've kind of learned how to live with the people that I've lost, and I've learned to stop blaming myself and all of that. I mean, it's like I said, I'm a success story in the mental health arena, which is nice, but the maintenance, man, I can't do it alone, right?
Yeah.
And it makes my circle very small. It's populated by people that get that, they understand that they have a part to play in that too, and if they want to say that makes them heroic, if you want to say that makes you heroic, I'll agree with you because it does. For one thing, it's very rare. For another thing, sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah, but
Just having to put up with me.
I don't know why anybody, once they know the price of being a hero, why would they want to be one?
I don't know, that I think it's another one of those situations where asking why, is not very satisfying.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like, nobody really knows. I mean, some people just got a thing about, uh, you know, standing up and doing the thing. And if you pin them down and beat a confession out of them, they'll tell you, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll tell you about the training or they'll tell you about the conditioning or what they've been through or whatever. But a lot of people go through all that and, they end up still not being very heroic. What's the difference between the two? And it's one of those things, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, I don't know why I am the way I am, but I am. And it's okay. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for listening. This has been the Men's Human Rights Weekly Chat, and thank you very much for your time. And we'll see you all next week.